Hey G-Fans, GojiFan93 here, and welcome back to the October Kaiju thon. In this video, we are going to wrap up the Daimajin trilogy. So, yes, in the last video, I talked about Daimajin, or the return of Daimajin, and how it was a little bit disappointing to the fact that it was basically the same movie that I just saw, that was similar to the first one. The third one, yeah, it's kind of the same thing. It's a little bit disappointing that this whole trilogy is kind of the overall same movie from the first one. So I'll get into a final theory that I have with this whole trilogy at the end of the review. But for now, basically it is the same kind of movie. We have Daimajin. The only differences actually here is that at the beginning of the movie, Daimajin actually pops up and starts wreaking havoc on this village, and that's one different thing. They never really explain how he was, like, why he was doing that. They were saying, oh, he's vengeful and he's not happy, what's going on, and they don't really explain why. So then it just kind of goes into the same plot where there's this bad guy who, I swear these are the same bad guys. They're wearing the same blue armor with the same, like, flag logo, and I don't know if this is connected to the first two movies, which is what I'm going to talk about my theory at the end of this review. So anyways, it's the bad guys have been, they're taking this village, they're making them slaves, they're making them work so that they can build this bridge or whatever. They don't really explain what they're doing except that they're trying to conquer neighboring villages and stuff like that. They're just trying to be this power-hungry empire, I guess. Another difference with this movie, though, is we don't really follow adult characters. We actually follow children in this one, which I was a bit skeptical at first. I was like, oh god, we're going to be following kids throughout the whole movie. They're not that bad, but they're still, I mean, there's like some of those child actors you're like, oh my god, just like, shut up. So yeah, we follow these kids through their journey from their village. They try to get to the slave camp to rescue their fathers, which I don't really understand how the kids think that they're gonna win without Daimajin or anything like that. But once again, they talk about that Daimajin is this god and that how he's vengeful and, you know, don't do anything bad. Although what they were talking about in this one is that the kids had to go over the Majin's mountain, which is this basically it's this magical place that's kind of cursed, and if you go in it you can get cursed or killed. Like, there's no way you can get through it, even though at the beginning of the movie one of the slaves was able to get right through the mountain and get back to the village. Excuse me. And also the kids end up going there too. What's kind of cool though is that we see a little bit more of the Daimajin, like how he is, and it's really cool to see more of this character. Basically he has an avatar which is this eagle, and it's really awesome. That's how he, like, basically the eagle is like his look. He looks and sees if there's anybody trespassing on his mountain. So we see this eagle just kind of constantly watching over the kids. But I think what's cool is that I think Daimajin was letting the kids pass through because they were probably, like, pure of heart. So he knew that they weren't there to do any wrong, that they were there to try to save their father, so therefore they're doing something good. So I think Daimajin was letting them pass, you know, with grace. But there's also some bad guys that are chasing them along the way. There's a couple of slapstick parts, you know, like the kids have an arrow and they're shooting the bad guys in the leg and they're like, oh god, and trying to chase them and all that. It's kind of like Home Alone things, which is just kind of but literally the whole movie is just watching the kids, you know, crossing the mountain, trying to get over it and through, and I mean, when it comes to a fantasy adventure, it kind of fills that. It's all right. But I wanted to see more of a different kind of story with this Daimajin, because this character is so cool, and I feel like they really needed to have some other kind of plot. But once again, because all three of these movies was filmed in the same year, kind of makes me wonder if, you know, were they rushing it? And I think they probably were rushing it or something, or maybe, I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. So anyways, basically the plot goes to the same thing that we've already seen. There comes a point where all of the slaves or some of the characters get up to this part where they're about to be executed, and of course right at the end we have a Deus Ex Machina where the Daimajin guy comes up and just starts wreaking havoc and killing the bad guys. And also they weren't really that creative with killing the bad guy in this one. It's in the first one it was cool because Daimajin, like, you know, put him on a cross and stabbed him with a stake that was stabbed into his forehead, which was really cool. In the second one, the bad guy got hung, but then he also got hung up in a way where it looked like he was on a cross, but he got burned. And then in this one, well, the big hazard was this sulfur lake and, you know, burning people and all that. So what the Daimajin does is he just puts him up against a rock. He actually uses the sword, though. That's one of the cool things. You see, like, he has a sword. He never used it for the other two movies, except for this one. He finally takes the sword out and uses it, which is awesome. So he takes the sword out, stabs the guy, and then he just lets him fall into the sulfur lake, which was kind of cool. But that's it. It's the same plot though, so I wasn't really that invested, and it's like, I mean, and otherwise this the setting as well was a little bit different. It was in a snowy area because it was on top, like near a mountain and whatever, so it was more of a winter setting, which I guess was kind of cool. I guess that somewhat differentiates it from the previous two films, but still, it just has the same plot elements to it, and it's just kind of like, okay, you know, how many times can I see the first film, you know, just be done with a different setting and different characters, but it's like, okay. So it's not the magnificent trilogy that I thought it was going to be, but here's my theory though, because we're at the end of the review, so here's my theory on these. I'm going to look at these films as like the Zelda games, where each Zelda entry isn't really a direct sequel. I mean, there are some that are direct sequels, but overall, the Zelda games are their own legend, right? They're their own story, their own self-contained story. Well, I just dropped the DVD. But anyway, so I think with the Daimajin trilogy, I think that each, like, movie is its own entity. It's its own contained story, its own legend. If you look at it that way, it's not actually that bad. And I'm not saying that the Daimajin trilogy is bad. It's not. It's a really fun, entertaining movie to watch, especially when Daimajin is on the screen and he is destroying stuff. It's a pretty cool spectacle. But I was kind of hoping for more, like maybe, you know, just an extended story with the characters that we saw in the first one, and maybe a little bit more backstory on the Daimajin god himself and stuff like that. But they don't really delve into it, and it's a little bit disappointed with that. But if you look at them as their own self-contained story, it's not too bad. But so yeah, that's my review of Daimajin Strikes Again. That's the third Daimajin movie. And yeah, that's it for this one. So stay tuned for the last movie in the marathon. Next, we're going to be looking at one of my favorite kaiju movies of all, Cloverfield. So hope you guys are excited for that. So I'll see you guys in the next review. Stay big, G fans.